Hey, it's Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader, and welcome to the Black Belt Leadership Podcast, where each week I'm giving you tips, tools, insights, and resources to help you become a better version of who you are and what you do as you discover, develop, and deploy your own Black Belt leader within. You know, I say often on this podcast that you can learn leadership lessons and discover them anywhere and everywhere as long as you're paying attention to what's going on in the world around you. And today's lesson is no different. I want to talk about blind spots and, in particular, being blind to opportunity. And I want to share a personal story, really, as a setup for what I want to teach today. Now, a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to visit the eye doctor for my regular eye exam. I was having my vision checked because I was having a little more difficulty reading than I had over the last year or so. So, after I finished what I thought was going to be a routine eye exam, the doctor looked at me and said, "John, has anybody ever told you that you've got cataracts?" Now, that to me was a surprise because I've been seeing this same eye doctor and visiting this same eye clinic for a number of years, and I'd never been asked that question. And the doctor began to explain that what he had seen as he examined my eyes was that cataracts, these dark spots that were growing in my eyes, had now begun to significantly impede my vision. Now, the doctor went on to explain that a cataract is a clouding of the eye lens. In some individuals, they're born with them. It's a congenital issue for most people, but as the majority of people get older, this lens begins to cloud. The reason for that is we get a buildup of protein in the lens of our eyes. And when those proteins begin to clump together, they begin to form dark spots that limit the amount of light that can pass through the lens and into the retina. So the doctor explained to me that initially your vision begins to fade, but if left untreated, eventually blindness is going to occur. So the doctor explained to me that I had cataracts in both eyes, and cataracts can occur in one eye or the other eye, or sometimes both. For me, it was both. He explained that many of the common symptoms of cataracts that people experience are faded colors, a halo around a light, double vision, poor night vision, which was becoming a big problem for me, a sensitivity to light or to glare, which was a problem to me at night, and frequent changes to eyeglass prescriptions. Now, I was farsighted and I'd got corrective lenses because I could see at a distance, but it got to the point I couldn't read up close. Now, when I had been told that cataracts may be one of the major contributors to my vision correction issue, to me, that was a surprise. So my optometrist referred me to an ophthalmologist to evaluate my treatment options. So I visit the ophthalmologist. I go through a series of amazing tests with some of the most state-of-the-art equipment I'd ever seen. And sure enough, it confirmed large growing cataracts in my left eye and my right eye. The right eye worse than my left. And these cataracts were not only limiting my field of vision, but they were limiting the amount of light that could enter my eye. I was slowly going blind. Yes, I had blind spots, but I was completely unaware because this process in most people happens slowly over time, and your vision begins to slowly fade, slowly darken, and ultimately, if uncorrected, the world goes black around you. Now, as the ophthalmologist explained to me what was going on in my eyes and why, I began to now understand why, when I was driving at night, excuse me, the headlines from oncoming traffic would make it very difficult for me to see the road in front of me, and sometimes the road would momentarily disappear. Now, it also explained why my peripheral vision wasn't as good as it once was, and why my ability to see way, way off into the distance was slowly becoming fuzzy like my close-up vision. Now, the words on the books I learned weren't shrinking and they weren't shimmering when I would try to read them. It was the cataracts limiting the amount of light that would enter my eyes that was making it hard to read. So the doctor informed me that the correction for this was lens replacement surgery. Now, lens replacement surgery is a procedure that involves a doctor using robotic tools to make a very small slit in the eye itself. And using these robotic tools, they would remove the damaged internal lens and replace it with a new artificial one that is designed to correct your vision. Now, the surgeries are scheduled about 3 weeks apart, and since my right eye was the worst eye, they wanted to start there first. Well, I remember showing up the day of the procedure and walking into the surgical unit, and the staff immediately made me feel friendly and right at home. They took me back in the back and set me in this futuristic chair, and I felt like in my mind I was Captain Kirk or I was Jean-Luc Picard, and I was about to take the Starship Enterprise out on a 5-year voyage to go where no man had gone before. And as I sit there, the process of preparing me for surgery began. They began to put drops in my right eye to dilate it and additional drops to numb my eye for the procedure. And the more they did this, the more my vision became more and more impaired. Imagine that. Your right eye fully dilated and your left eye with a cataract. And I'm in there trying to read a very interesting book. And after a little bit, that preparation process made it nearly impossible. Well, after about an hour of going through this prep process, they wheeled me back into the surgical room and they took this futuristic chair, laid me back, and positioned a small device over my eye to hold the eyelid back so the doctor could work on my eye. And the surgeon began to delicately remove that damaged lens and, using those robotic tools, replace it with a pristine artificial lens to correct my vision. Now, I was awake, yes, I was, but I experienced no pain and no discomfort. I did get myself in trouble during the first procedure that I was there because the doctor had music being piped into the surgical unit. And they were playing some really cool pop music, and my foot began to kind of tap to the beat of the music and began to tap a little bit more. And before I knew it, I was apparently really getting into the song that we're playing. And the doctor said, "John, you might not want to tap your foot right now. I am working on your eye." And I had a laugh, and we all did. And he went back to doing what he's done. And in about 15 short minutes, I was wheeled out of the surgical unit into a recovery room. They had placed a plastic protective shield over my eye, but they had also placed surgical tape across the lens so that the thing could be held to my eye and would stay there overnight to protect that lens and that eye while I slept. So I wasn't able to really see whether or not the procedure had worked. The very next morning, I went in for my post-operational surgical follow-up, and when I walked in with the patch on my eye looking like Patchy the Pirate, one of the nurses walked through and she saw me and she said, "Oh, Mr. Terry, you can take that shield off. That was only for sleeping to protect your eye." She said, "But close your eye before you do so because it's going to have to adjust to the light." So I closed my right eye and I grabbed the tape and slowly pulled it off. And as I began to open my eye, and for a moment it was fuzzy, but then as it began to clear, the world around me all of a sudden jumped into vivid, pristine, bright color. That doctor's office that in previous visits had been dull and dark and drab, all of a sudden shone in a way that was amazing. I looked around and I could see clearly the corners of the tables. I could read the small print on the books that were setting on the coffee tables and the little waiting room tables. And as I looked around the room, all of the print on the different posters that were on the wall that had been hard to read or fuzzy or, for me, small print, impossible to read, I could now read clearly. Well, they took me in for a vision exam, and I began to read as I covered my left eye and looked out my eye with my new lens. I could read the letters and numbers with amazing clarity. Now, remember, my right eye was the worst eye, and it had the worst impairment in terms of vision correction. And I could read all the characters on the 2020 line clearly, and most of the characters on the 2015 line. Now, I went back 3 weeks later and repeated that process for not just my right eye, but my left eye. And in the right eye, I could still read most of the 2015 line. But in my left eye, I could not only read the 2020 and all of the 2015, I could read most of the 2010 characters. And as I walked out at the end of that follow-up visit, I had an aha moment. I had been seeing the world dimly through a haze and didn't even realize that I was seeing through a fog. I had been living with a blind spot, and I had been completely unaware that that was taking place in my life. I was missing out, not being able to see everything around me in clear detail. And what I was seeing, I didn't realize I was seeing dimly in faded color. As a result of what had been taking place in my eyes, I was missing out on a lot of detail. But all of a sudden, I could see the world around me in crisp, vivid color. It was like going from watching a movie on an old cathode television that our parents watched growing up to being able to watch the same movie in 4K. That was the difference for me. But here's something else I realized in that aha moment, and that's where I want to lean in for just a minute, and that's in the area of blind spots. Now, you may not have cataracts in your eyes that physically impair your vision, but I'm here to tell you that you and I all have blind spots in our lives. We all experience moments of blindness. And what do I mean by that? We may walk past the opportunity of a lifetime and oblivious to the fact that it's there waiting for us to see it, seize it, leverage it to our personal and professional advantage because we're not walking through life being intentionally aware of what's around us. We may be overlooking, ignoring, or simply not seeing the next great setup for success in our lives. So I want to spend just a few moments talking about opportunity blindness. Because at some point in our lives, we all experience it. And if you're experiencing it right now, it's a blind spot that we need to correct. And I want to give you 4 common symptoms so that you can evaluate whether or not you are currently dealing with opportunity blindness. And then at the end of this podcast, I want to give you some prescriptive remedy to get opportunity blindness out of your life so you can see clearly what is before you. You know, when we're opportunity blind, we're either walking through life unaware of the opportunities that are before us, or we're unable to recognize circumstances and situations that we could leverage to our personal or professional advantage. Every single day, life presents us with opportunities. Now, those opportunities are often disguised as a problem or a challenge. It's that next potential setup for success that we've got to recognize for what it is. But if we are opportunity blind, we fail to see the opportunity in that challenge, in that circumstance, in that situation. And when we fail to see it, we fail to take action. And as a result, we're missing out on the next setup for success. Now, there's 4 common symptoms that I believe are associated with opportunity blindness, and this is what I want to spend a few minutes pointing out and making you aware of. Because like a cataract, these symptoms can impede how you and I see the world around us. They can limit our field of view, and they can cloud our ability to see clearly the opportunities that life is wanting to present us and the success setups that are waiting for us to see, seize, and act upon. Now, the very first of these symptoms is having a fixed mindset. Now, remember, and I've talked about it in previous podcast episodes, we're all creatures of habit. Our brain loves what's familiar. Our brain loves the status quo, and it loves it so much, it does everything within its power to maintain what is called homeostasis, or a sense of sameness. So what does the brain do? There's some 86 billion neurons in our brain, and as those neurons talk to each other and communicate, that's how our brain tells our body what to do. So the brain, loving the familiar, aligns these 86 billion neurons into clusters. It literally hardwires the daily routines that we perform so that we can do them without conscious thought. It groups the neurons that are responsible for these tasks and binds them together, connecting them to the memories for those routines so we don't have to think about how to walk, how to talk, how to turn our head, how to open a door, how to pick up a pen and write. We literally don't have to think about those things with significant conscious thought. They have become habits and routines. Now, think about that in your life and in my life. You and I, we all tend to approach tasks the same way every single day of our lives. I promise you that you probably have a wake-up routine that varies rarely every single day. And if you travel to work, you probably go the same route to work every single day. And when you're there, perform the same basic task over and over again. Again, doing same thing the same way. You probably go to lunch or dinner at the same local restaurants and have the same return trip home that you do every single day, Monday through Friday. And when you get home, you likely also have a routine for unwinding from work and a get ready for bed routine that has become so systemized, we don't even think about it. We just do it. So day in, day out, it's more of the same old, same old. And if we do the same things the same way over and over again, we're going to simply get more of the same. Now, a fixed mindset also approaches problem solving the same way. Again, going back to the brain, if something worked, the brain is going to repeat that process and go to that memory of what worked, and it's going to say, do this again. And it's going to do it without pausing to consider, could there be a better way? Could there be a more efficient way? Could there be an easier way? Could there be a more productive way to do what we've always done? And by the same token, if something doesn't work, our brain is going to go to the memory and say, oh, that didn't work, or oh, I tried that problem and I couldn't fix it. I ran into that opportunity and I couldn't see success with it. And as a result, our brain tells us to simply walk away because it's not something we're capable of solving or overcoming. So as a result of dealing with this fixed mindset, we become open to the same old, and nothing more. We refuse to be open to see what could be if we simply pause to question that fixed mindset. Is there a better way? Is there an easier way? Is there a faster, more efficient, more productive, more profitable way to do what we're doing now? Simply questioning that fixed mindset can be a big deal, but because we don't do that and we're creatures of habit, we simply settle for what we already know. And if we settle for what we already know and we don't try anything new, we don't learn, we don't grow, we don't mature, and we don't expand the quality of our thinking in the process. And this is one of the ways that you and I settle for less. Now, the second common symptom of opportunity blindness is a fear of failure. You got to remember, the brain loves to win. And the brain loves to win so much that every time we win, the brain releases dopamine, that feel-good chemical, every time we do so. It's the brain's way of reminding us that whatever you did was amazing, that was good, do it again. And as a result of that, that dopamine in our brain, as it's released, stimulates the learning process so that we learn what works. And it hardwires that routine so we go back and do it again to get another dopamine rush in our brain. But by the same token, if we fail and when we fail, the brain reduces the levels of dopamine. And as a result of that, we go through a sense of dullness, a sense of sadness, or a sense of depression as our brain is trying to train us not to do things that result in failure. And so as a result of that, when we approach something similar in the future, we want to avoid that area. If we tried it in the past and it didn't work, why go try it and fail again? We, because of our brain, want to avoid areas of unfamiliarity. We want to avoid areas of prior failure because we don't like it. It doesn't feel good when we fail because we feel the loss, we feel the inadequacy, we feel the sadness, and our brain doesn't like that. So as a result, our brain creates a cognitive bias that leans into doing the things we already know that we can do well, the things that align with our existing beliefs and the prior success we've already had. So rather than attempting to do something new, rather than looking at the opportunity to expand our capability, our brain kicks in and you and I choose to allow the fear of the unknown to color the view of the opportunity before us in a negative light. As a result of that, we see only the problem or the challenge and not the opportunity. This is part of our primal fight or flight mechanism deeply rooted in our brain that views everything that's unfamiliar as dangerous, even if it's not, And in its misguided attempt to protect us, it holds us back from saying, doing, and becoming more. As a result of that, we never venture into the unknown or into the unfamiliar. But if we never do that, we never get the opportunity to experience learning something new and getting that dopamine dump that says, hey, this is great. You've learned to do something new. Let's do it again. Because when we get into the unfamiliar or the unknown, that's where personal growth happens. That's where we have the opportunity to expand the quality of our thinking, our saying, our doing, and becoming so that we can accomplish more in our lives. But when we choose not to do that and we allow the fear of failure to hold us back, we remain where we are, as we are, unchanged. Now, the third symptom of opportunity blindness is having a lack of perspective. You know, the old adage, you can't see the forest for the trees, is really true. I remember several years ago taking my dog Hans on a hike, and we went to explore a trail that we'd never been down before. Now, I should have paid attention as we were going down the trail, and apparently people hadn't been on this trail in years, and you would walk for a period of time and then the trail would disappear. All of the marks that you would normally look for to know how to navigate this trail were missing, and I failed to make some visual references to get me out of the forest. And before I knew it, I was lost in the Ozark National Forest with my dog, and I ended up coming out hours later, some 15, almost 20 miles from where I started. So I can tell you from experience, when you can't see the forest for the trees, it's true. Because when I was in the Ozark National Forest, I had no frame of reference to really be able to see and understand because I've been turned around, whether north, south, east, or west. I had a compass on my phone with no cell service, so I was literally blind and trying to figure out how to get out. So I picked a direction and walked till I ultimately found a road, ultimately came to a house, and a nice old man gave my dog and I a ride back to where I'd parked my car. I mention that because sometimes the problems that we experience, and for me, if I could have gotten a different vantage point, if I could have been able to get out of the valley I was in and get up on the top of a mountain to see above the tree line, I could get visual reference points to figure out my way back to Hot Springs, Arkansas. And it's the same for you and I when it comes to opportunity blindness. Many times the problems that we experience can be more readily solved if we only have the opportunity to gain a different perspective or to pause and examine the problem from a different vantage point. Because when we can position ourselves to see the bigger picture or align ourselves with other visionaries who can help us see the bigger picture, all of a sudden we don't just see what is, we see what could be possible. And when we're looking at a problem, we're looking at a challenge, we're looking at a situation and we see what is. It's the ability to think outside the box that not only lets us see the problem or the situation or the crisis or challenge at the moment, we see how we can leverage that and use that to our advantage to turn that into an opportunity to experience success and learn something new in the process. Out of the box thinking, hear me when I say this, out of the box thinking is essential. It is mission critical for you and I to turn a challenge or a problem into an opportunity to experience success. You know, if we lack perspective, here's a great visual. When you lack perspective, it's like trying to assemble a 1,000-piece puzzle with all of the puzzle pieces turned down. You can't see the pictures, all you see are the shapes, and there's thousands of them strewn out all over the table. It's chaos. And when you can't think out of the box or when you lack perspective, we can't make sense of the chaos. Now, let me remind you, and I've talked about this often in my podcast, the greatest innovators of the past and the present, they've utilized big picture thinking to see what other people couldn't see. And they used big picture thinking to be willing to see what could be so they could take the risk to try something new, to try something unique, to try something different to accomplish what other people said couldn't be done. Now, the fourth symptom of opportunity blindness is a lack of preparedness. Now, if you're a basketball fan, you probably know the name Coach John Wooden. He was the legendary basketball coach of UCLA. John Wooden famously said, when opportunity knocks, it's too late to prepare. Now, my mentor, Dr. John Maxwell, often says that a spectacular performance is always preceded by unspectacular preparation. Now, to me, that just about sums it up. Because if we're not ready when opportunity shows up, we can't seize, and leverage that opportunity to our advantage. That opportunity is going to go seek someone out who is prepared to take that opportunity and make the most of it. You know, I think about Kobe Bryant when I think about this. Kobe Bryant didn't want opportunity blindness to rob him of his dream to play in the NBA. So very early on, even while he was still in high school, Kobe committed to a daily preparation process that was just incredible. Kobe would get up every morning and would practice for 2 hours. He would have breakfast and spend another 2 hours practicing on the court. After lunch, another 2 hours on the court. After dinner, another 2 hours on the court. Somewhere between 6 and 8 hours a day, he would train 6 days a week, relentlessly over and over, putting himself in every possible situation that he could potentially face now or in the future as he played basketball, while his peers would practice a couple of hours a day, 2 to 3 times a week. Now, in a famous YouTube video, Kobe was asked about this, and he noted that if you went through the process that he did, relentlessly preparing day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, here's what he said. At some point, your peers or competitors simply can't catch up. You are so far ahead of the competition, no matter what they do to bridge that preparation gap, that gap is simply too wide. And if we go on to look at Kobe Bryant's success in the NBA, we can see that he understood how to make sure the opportunity blindness spot had been removed from his eyes. But you know, it's sad when I look at Kobe and then I look at the world around us. Far few people are willing to invest in themselves enough to gain the skills, to hone their talent, to develop the knowledge, wisdom, and the insight they need to be able to see and seize the opportunities that set before them every single day. Now, think about that in your life. Are you doing daily what you need to do to see success? I love to say, and I talk about it in my book, Black Belt Secrets of Success, getting started, yes, it's difficult, but as Lao Tzu said, it is that very first step that gets you started on a journey of 1,000 miles. And while the first step may be difficult, comparing that to the remainder of the 1,000-mile journey, you get the gist of what I'm talking about. Getting started is difficult, but comparing that to persisting until you succeed, that first step is a whole lot easier. That's why we see a lot of people start well, and about halfway through the process, when what is fun is no longer fun, people quit investing in themselves. They quit learning, growing, maturing, and stretching what they're capable of learning, saying, doing, and becoming. And as a result of that, they settle for less than the best. Now, again, in my book, Black Belt Secrets of Success, I address this issue very early on by reminding my readers, and I'm going to remind you of the number one principle of success. And that principle is this: successful people do daily what unsuccessful people do sometimes or not at all. So let me quickly wrap this up by answering the question that I know you're asking. Okay, John, how do I overcome opportunity blindness? Well, let me give you a prescription for that. First, cultivate a growth mindset. Well, duh. I talk about this almost every single week because the quality of thinking that got you to where you are today isn't going to get you to where you want to go tomorrow. We see that with every great individual in sports, in science, in math, in literature. They continue to stretch the quality of their thinking so they can stretch the quality of their saying, doing, and becoming. Because it's as we learn and it's as we grow, we start to believe that we are capable of more. That's what a growth mindset is all about. And as we grow, I'm here to tell you this, we get an opportunity to grow into the opportunities that life brings our way. Now, a growth mindset is that prescriptive cure for having a fixed mindset. It's also a remedy for a lack of perspective because personal growth is going to cause a change in how we see the world around us as we're learning and we're growing and we're discovering all of a sudden that we're capable of more. When our perspective changes, all of a sudden we see a situation and now we can creatively seek an answer to that problem, to that challenge, to that situation to discover the opportunity within and how to leverage that to our advantage. Because as we learn, as we apply what we've learned, and as we teach others what we're learning, we're mitigating the negative influences of a lack of preparation in our lives. One of the best ways to prepare is to learn, to act on what we've learned, and to teach it to someone else. Now, secondly, we overcome the blind spots in our lives by challenging negative beliefs. So, how do we do that? You got to remember this. Much of what you and I believe to be true, we've never questioned and we've never examined why we believe it to be true. Because much of what we believe to be true is either rooted in our primal fight or flight mechanism, or it's nothing more than a negative limiting belief that has been passed down from our parents, our grandparents, and others in our family. And we subconsciously embraced that belief as true, whether it is or not. And we never question it. We never challenge. We just accept it to be true because our parents or another authority figure spoke that into our lives. And we said, okay, I'll embrace that. That to me is truth. So for personal growth to take place and to remove the blind spots from our lives, you and I have got to be willing to question the negative assumptions about what we believe we're capable of. How many times do we tell ourselves that we can't when in reality it's that we simply choose not to try? I want to say that again. How many times do we tell ourselves we can't when it's simply a choice that we choose not to try? I mean, think about it. Most of us didn't believe going back in the early formative years of our lives that we could ride a bicycle without training wheels, that we could go up and down a staircase without having to hold on to the banister, that we could put on a pair of skates and go roller skating, that we could swim without a life vest, that we could jump from a high dive and not break every bone in our body when we hit the water. Many, many things that we've learned to do and we've learned to overcome as we grew up. When we get older, all of a sudden we quit exploring the world around us, seeing what is available, and looking for the next opportunity. So, challenging our negative beliefs is a powerful remedy to overcome the cognitive biases that are holding us back so that we don't just experience more of the same. Now, the last prescription I want to give you is this: embrace risk and learn from failure. You know, one of the things when I'm speaking from the stage at a conference or a workshop or an event, when I speak to my audiences, I love to remind them of this very simple statement. Nothing changes in your life until something changes in your life. Again, think about that. And we talked about that earlier in the podcast. If we do the same old, we're going to get the same old. So nothing's going to change for you until something changes for you. So when we're unwilling to take risks, to put ourselves out there, and to be willing to fail and learn and get up and try again until we succeed, we're never going to discover that we're capable of saying, doing, becoming, or accomplishing more than we are right now. We're simply going to settle for a mediocre, average, lackluster life. Remember, life uses failure to reveal to us what doesn't work so we can go try something new and persist until we succeed. I've talked about Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Steven Spielberg, Walt Disney, famous inventors and famous people that have been very, very successful that were told that they were incapable and failed and failed and failed again until they finally succeeded. If they can do it, you can do it, I can do it. So what's holding us back? It's blindness. It's that opportunity blindness and allowing that fixed mindset, that concern of a fear of failure, that lack of preparation, and that lack of perspective that are holding us back. You got to remember, when we go back and look at the greatest innovators, the greatest creators, some of the most successful people of the modern era, every single one of them failed their way to success. They weren't a one-hit wonder, and it was the years and years of failure that ultimately led to that breakthrough success in their lives that made them successful. So I'm here to remind you of this. Failing doesn't make you a failure. You and I, we're all going to fail at something and probably fail every single day. Failure is simply an opportunity to learn what doesn't work so we can get back up, try again, and keep experimenting until we find what does. Failure is a moment in time. We only become a failure when we stay in that moment of failure. Failure is an opportunity to learn, to try again, and to ultimately experience success. You and I only become a failure when we stop trying. You know, Thomas Edison said it well. He said, our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time. Now, I want to give that quote to you again because that to me really sums up this last cure for opportunity blindness. Our greatest weakness lies in giving up, staying in that moment of failure and not moving forward. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time. Now, this from the man that failed 10,000 times before he successfully created the incandescent light bulb and went on to become one of the most prolific inventors of modern history. So, Thomas Edison's quote is the remedy for overcoming the fear of failure, one of the symptoms of opportunity blindness. Just keep trying one more time. So, remember this, and I'm going to call it a close after I share this with you. Remember this, we all experience blind spots in our lives, every single one of us. And as a result of that, we don't realize what we may be overlooking, ignoring, or simply not seeing. You and I may be walking past the opportunity of a lifetime, oblivious to the fact that we're missing out. Blindness to opportunity is a blind spot that you and I need to correct. And I've given you some steps that you can take action on today to begin to mitigate or eliminate opportunity blindness in your life. Don't forget this. When we're opportunity blind, we're either walking through life unaware of the opportunities that are always before us, waiting on us to see and seize and leverage them to our success, or if we're opportunity blind, we're unable to recognize the circumstances or the situations that we could leverage to our personal and professional advantage by turning a circumstance, a situation, a challenge, or a problem into an opportunity to succeed. Don't forget that daily life constantly is presenting us with opportunities disguised often as a problem or a challenge, when in fact, those challenges, those problems, those situations that look insurmountable are the next setup for success in our lives. If we fail to see them, if we fail to take action, you and I are missing out. So your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to challenge opportunity blindness. Act on the things I shared with you today. Engage in a personal growth mindset. Have an opportunity to learn and grow yourself. Challenge limited thinking and be willing to take some risk to step out into the unknown and make sure that every day you're learning the lessons life is trying to teach you. Failure can be one of our greatest instructors that can ultimately lead us to success if we're open and willing to learn, apply, and teach others. Opportunity blindness is there, but it doesn't have to be. I've given you the prescription. It's up to you to take the prescription. I'm Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day.